Okay, so this is my core principles of jazz dance video presentation. My name is Tiahnna Richards, and this was done upon my High National Diploma in Dance course. I'm just going to quickly skim over what the contents of this video presentation include. So we've got the origins of jazz dance, including the pioneers, musicality, technical elements, personal progression, some dance films within jazz dance, and much more. So when we talk about origins of a genre, what we mean is where it began. So jazz dance evolved from many different things. One of them is history, slavery, which we don't agree with. We don't agree with slavery or any kind of oppression, but it did evolve from that. It would have been a dance performance that people were made to do as an entertainment value. There was also an era of jazz being used in a conversational way, forms like Lindy hop, swing, jitterbug that you might not think of when you think of jazz, and even tap. That's what jazz was decades and decades, hundreds of years ago. That's what jazz used to be before it pioneered to what we see now. So it was really between the 1930s and 60s that major pioneers such as Jack Cole, Bob Fosse took what jazz was and really started to take it into something else, which we know as modern jazz dance. There's also theatrical jazz dance, so there's different forms, and that is explored throughout this presentation. Pioneers include Jack Cole, Catherine Dunham. Jack Cole really incorporated modern, contemporary, ethnic, and ballet influences into what is now known as theatrical jazz dance. His style is very angular, very acrobatic, very dramatic, lots of knee slides. We see those all the time in dance. The use of deep pliés, a little bit of ballet technique within his choreography. Also, Bob Fosse, who introduced things like inverted limbs, hunched posture, famous Fosse technique, sideways shuffling, rolled shoulders, jazz hands, wrist twists, finger snaps, and his techniques are commonly used in jazz technique today. Catherine Dunham came from a ballet background. She's also influenced by Caribbean and Latin practice. Through this, she incorporated isolations into jazz dance. So Jack Cole is obviously quite commonly known as the father of theatrical jazz dance. So again, he's got a very theatrical style, which has already been detailed in the previous page. There's a little bit here just on his background. He started with the National Dance Company, led by Ruth St. Dennis and Ted Shawn. Fond of Cole, he studied ballet, modern and contemporary dance. He was fascinated by Asian dance, which I think really shows in the way that he dresses himself and some of the face makeup he used. He also utilises his costuming and choreography. So there's a lot of fusion there, really. He performed with other pioneering modernists, including Charles Weidman, Joyce Humphrey. He eventually leave the modern dance and go for a commercial dance career in nightclubs, performing with Alice Dudley and Florence Lessing. Cole was a performer in Broadway musicals, starting with The Dream of Cinderella in 1933. So he's a very early pioneer. So it was in 1943 that his piece Alive and Kicking and also his piece Carnival in Flanders did really well. This incorporates his use of ballet technique, huge leaps, turns, pliés. His choreography was known for sudden changes in speed and direction. He developed a form of jazz ethnic ballet that hadn't been done previously. So he's pretty much pioneered his own form of dance that never existed. He studied the Indian dance form Bharatanatyam and used other ethnic material in his dances. Not Since Nineveh in 1955 is a fantastic example. Techniques of Bharatanatyam, such as moving the head side to side, articulation of the hands, and fast turns on a flat foot, are strongly applied to this piece. So I think with Jack Cole, every piece you look at, you're going to feel like you're watching sort of a very different genre of dance. So his impact on the dance industry involves, all kinds of Broadway shows and films, such as There's No Business Like Show Business, the 1954 musical comedy drama featuring Marilyn Monroe, who Jack worked with for many years. One of Cole's most memorable choreographic highlights is Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, Marilyn Monroe in the film musical Gentlemen Preferred Blondes. This inspired Madonna in her music video Material Girl. Also, what I would also say is that some of these influences were also seen in the dance film Chicago. There's a Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend scene in that, which is, again, you see it all the time. His work is innovated. A lot of people copy his work. Cole's acrobatic and angular style in using small groups of dancers rather than a large flock is a feature of jazz dance today. Vernon claimed that Jack influenced all the choreographers in theatre, including Jerome Robbins, Michael Kidd, and Bob Fosse. When you see dancing on television, that's Jack Cole. Bob Fosse was an American performer, musical theatre choreographer, actor, and director. He actually won 8 Tony Awards for choreographing and directing, more than any other established artist at that time. He's most famously adored in successful productions such as Chicago and All That Jazz, still performed in theatres today. Chicago was made into a film in 2022 and also in 2002, starring Richard Gere, Renee Zellweger, and Catherine Zeta-Jones, and it won 6 Oscars. Fosse was trained in ballet from age 6 to 13 at the Frederick Weaver Ballet School. He also did tap and modern dance, performed on stage professionally in his early teens in burlesque and vaudeville clubs. To be quite honest with you, his burlesque background is actually incorporated into his work. There's a slightly subtle sense of something quite risque in his work, and this is kind of where there's overlap between burlesque, cabaret, and jazz dance. So he signed up to an MGM contract, made many successful film musicals, including Girl Give Me a Break, The Affairs of Bobby Gillis, and Kiss Me Kate, all released in the same year. This is a musical comedy where Fosse played a leading role and was enchanted by someone that was Susie Doolittle, played by Debbie Reynolds. So again, he's also danced within musicals himself, so he's done very well, and his career was cut short by typecasting, which persuaded him to make a big transition from Hollywood to theatre and become a choreographer. Here we go into further detail of his background. He choreographed and directed Chicago in 1975, which ran 900 shows, and revived in the West End debut in 1979 that ran over 600 performances. It holds the record for the longest running musical and is still performed in theatres today. Again, this is just talking more about his particular techniques. So Fred Astaire is also mentioned here. He used props and canes, chairs, white gloves, and top hats. These styles and use of props are still used in jazz dance today. So things like Singing in the Rain is what I'm thinking of right now when I think of Fred Astaire. Beyonce's Body, Get Me Bodied music video. There's movements from the Richmond's Fugue. Richmond's Fugue is another one of famous Fosse creations. And there I've provided 2 links. So Beyonce's music video where she uses Fosse influences, and then the original Richmond's Fugue, so you can easily compare the 2 yourself, having a look at that. Moving on to Catherine Dunham. This is an American dancer, choreographer, educator, author, and social activist. She was born in Illinois and passed in New York City. Had a very successful dance career at the time. She was exceptionally famous across America and European theatres. She was known as the Queen Mother of black dance. Dunham's performance training and background. Dunham studied dance and ethnography in the Caribbean whilst attending the University of Chicago, which led to her graduating with a master's thesis in anthropology. Through this, Catherine realised that performance was her professional calling. In 1928, Dunham was taught ballet by Ruth Page and Mark Turbeville. She was exposed to other dance forms such as Spanish, Balinese, and East Indian. This inspired how she choreographed pieces, such as La Aguia, her first full-length ballet. This included dance forms such as Cuba, Brazilian, and much more. Tiahnna formed her own ballet company when she was only 21 years old in 1931. This was one of the first black ballet companies in the US. In 1934, Tiahnna performed as a guest artist for the ballet company of the Chicago Opera, which gave it an exciting role, and her students from her company were cast members. This was based on a Martinique folk tale and was the first debuted in 1933 with Ruth Page as the lead dancer of the all-black dance cast. So in 1937, she managed to revive her dance ensemble after her career was interrupted by her move to the Caribbean and studying anthropology over there. So clearly, she's done very well for herself. She performed West Indian dances such as Haitian suit. There's a cultural influence there. Ballet piece inspired with tropic there. Upon returning to Chicago, the company performed a variety of pieces at the theatre, Woman with a Sitar, Rarotonga, which was inspired by the musical Tropical Review. These led to success and recognition for her. She was given the role of dance director at the Chicago Theatre for the Federal Theatre Project. She choreographed and directed several theatre productions such as Emperor Jones and much more. In 1947, Dunham opened her own dance school, Catherine School of Dance Theatre in New York City. In 1947, Catherine expanded her school and renamed it Catherine Dunham School of Cultural Arts. The school thrived for 10 years and was considered to be one of the top learning centres of its kind. Her work ethic and success inspired her students to open their own dance schools in Paris, Rome, and Stockholm. Known for her many innovations, Dunham created dance pedagogy, later known as the Dunham technique. This technique involved Afro-Caribbean and Latin American influences such as isolations. It won international recognition, is now taught as a modern dance style in numerous dance schools, including Cleveland Dance Movement. And there's also a video there to her technique, viewing that. The musicality of jazz dance includes common musical time structures such as a 2-2, a 2-4, a 3-4, and so on. These time structures cover a wide range of music used in jazz dance. There's an example of a 4-4 timing on the YouTube link. So a pulse, the most prominent beat in a piece of music. Accent, emphasis placed on a note. Compound time, rhythm in which the beats in a bar are subdivided into 3 smaller sections. Offbeat involves a beat that does not coincide with the regular rhythmic structure of a piece of music. Syncopation, displacement of beats and accents in music, so significant beats become weaker and vice versa. So jazz dance does have a tendency to use rhythm. This is quite different from contemporary. The musicality is a bit broader in contemporary. It often doesn't really involve rhythm. Sometimes you dance to no music or you dance over music, whereas jazz dance is much more rhythmic. Just discussing some technical elements of jazz dance. Use of turnout, outward rotation of the hip flexor and thigh muscles is required in some jazz steps, such as for a side kick. Use of parallel, syncopated movements, and polyrhythmic movements, which is the use of one or more conflicting rhythms simultaneously. Angular movements, movements producing by flexing and extending a joint. This is done in jazz port de bras. Linear movements, motion done through a straight line. Quick shifts of gravitational center, a Y balance in which a dancer balances on one leg and extends their working leg whilst tilting far onto one side. Contraction and extension, which involves releasing tension in a muscle and also lengthening the muscle. A chest contraction, for instance, involves arching the spinal region and abdominal muscles. So contraction is kind of like an in-out motion. An example of all the technical elements stated is provided on the YouTube link. So isolations, which are produced by Dunham, finger snaps, and jazz hands. Foot patterns will include things like chasses, jazz walks, pas de bourrées, jazz square, and ball change. Jazz kicks and leg extensions involve grand battements, flick kicks, hitch kicks, fan kicks, and tilts. You can see the descriptions of them there if you're interested in understanding what those things specifically are. I'll just give you a little bit of time to read through that. These are some visual demonstrations of the kicks that I mentioned, just so you can see them with your own eyes. So there are lots of different types of jazz turns, pirouettes, chaîné turns, soutenu. There are also drag turns and leg catch turns, which I don't think I've included in this, but drag turns and leg catch turns are also often done in jazz. So you have 3/4 turns, half turns, probably 1/4 turns as well, piqué turns, inside turns, and outside turns. Moving on to jumps and leaps, you have flick jetés, box splits, and jazz splits. And on the following slide, there are some visual examples of those as well. So here you can see there's a side leap / box split and jeté, an airborne attitude leap, and a flick jeté. So my personal progression in jazz has progressed since training with my tutors. So I did a grade 4 International Dance Teachers Association Examination Board exam after just 3.5 months exam of jazz dance. So this was roughly around an intermediate level, and I received a 91% out of 100 in that. So this was really, really good for me. So I'm now currently at a grade 5 level in jazz. Right, okay, so this was quite a long time ago when I did this. It was about 5 years ago. So more sort of intermediate transitioning advanced, but around this time I was more intermediate foundation. This was about 5 years ago that I achieved this. And here you can see my progression. So, you know, I think in the first photo and the second photo in particular, you can kind of see my flexibility there where I'm doing the splits and things like that. I mean, in these photos, although they're not the most amazing quality, you can kind of see my elevation there, that I am pretty far off the floor. The distance between my legs and the floor is pretty good. Again, which is really good because in jazz, the jumps are supposed to be powerful and athletic, and I'm clearly gaining that acceleration. Furthermore, here are just some images that demonstrate my flexibility and what appears to be my stretching routine. I am actually a lot more flexible now because this was like 2015 to 16 to 17, and obviously we're in 22 now. So these images demonstrate some solo and partner work. So I'm just analysing my alignment, and you can see there from what I'm saying, what I'm obviously getting up to. And that was when I was doing my high national diploma, and you can see that I'm in the dance studio there. So I believe that this is in relation to some sort of assessment, so jazz technique assessment, and you can just see there, I think in the second photo again, just how high my leg is, and I'm in a nice deep plie and really doing the same thing as what the teacher's doing. So here we're just discussing how jazz is similar or different to other genres you may or may not have explored. Now, again, if you haven't really done jazz, this is quite useful to know. So it holds similarity to contemporary in offering motif which travels across a space, and offering lower, more grounded, slinky movements. It is different from contemporary in being big in the musical theatre industry. It is less abstract in its performance and choreographic style. It holds similarity to hip-hop because it often uses a sharp attack movement dynamic. It is different from hip-hop in a technical aspect. Jazz offers minimalistic movement due to Dunham and Fossum influences. Jazz shoes and heels are traditionally used, whereas contemporary dance is done barefoot and ballet is done in pointe. It holds similarity to ballet in being highly terminology based, offering leaps, jumps, kicks and turns, but the vocabulary isn't in French. It is different to ballet because it is often done in parallel and is more angular, and sometimes flexed feet are used depending on the type of jazz. IDTA offers both jazz and ballet exams, and I did both under IDTA, and the differences were very clear. Jazz has more tricks than contemporary. Contemporary doesn't explore the isolations and contractions commonly seen in jazz. Jazz is more commonly seen in the West End, Broadway, and in competitions than other dance forms. Here's some different forms of jazz dance: Broadway jazz, West End jazz, musical theatre jazz, modern jazz, lyrical jazz, contemporary jazz, street dance jazz, Africanist jazz, social dances like jive, Lindy Hop, jitterbug, and disco, which is your sort of early era, Latin jazz, tap jazz, and Charleston. I'm also going to include Fosse technique alongside, although Fosse does influence a lot of these, particularly Broadway, West End, and musical theatre, and even modern. And I would also say the Gatsby era, and I would also say burlesque and cabaret. And I think Fosse really pioneered that era. Again, burlesque and cabaret, they're seen as different forms of dance from jazz altogether now, but really jazz is a massively broad umbrella. And if we go back decades and decades ago, a lot of Fosse's work was inspired by what was going on in gentlemen's clubs, and there was more of a risque approach to jazz dance at that time. Famous movies in which jazz is seen: Chicago, Swing Kids, La La Land, Save the Last Dance, Footloose, Work It, Feel the Beat, West Side Story, Greatest Showman, and Dirty Dancing. I've seen these myself. You can get the DVDs of them online. You can obviously watch jazz dance, say in like Curve Theatre, for instance. So thank you for viewing my dance video presentation. Jazz dance is mentioned in my dance education blog website and further blogs, video presentations and vlogs, which will be released during 2023. So my dance education blog website is already released and running, has more than 20 articles on it. Haven't yet to necessarily specifically discuss jazz on there, but I will be linking this video into that blog, and I will be discussing jazz in there and conducting some articles that discuss different things from what this article does, particularly around technique, injury prevention, and anatomy of jazz dance.